Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever that you are, wherever you may be. Thank you very much for making us a part of your day. I am Brad Franklin, Digital Media Relations Manager here in Chesterfield. Very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. Now, listen, it is not very often that I get to sit among genuine heroes, people who risk their lives and actually go out there and do the kinds of things that not all of us were made by the good Lord to do. I am very thankful to get the opportunity to do this podcast and work alongside folks like this. It's one of the great things about doing a podcast like this is because you get to interview all kinds of manners of folks who are involved in the community and maybe in this case helping those who aren't even in this community. So I'm very glad to welcome Justin Bennett and Graham Lathrop from the Fire and EMS operation here in Chesterfield. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. How are we doing?
Good. Thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
I like the fact that I started that intro and you both sort of just like your eyes got big. So we're here to talk about a little bit today is the operation that you guys were a part of in Southwest Virginia recently, and after the hurricane came through that area, lots of flooding, lots of devastation and destruction. Before we get into that, though, I want to give folks a little bit of a chance to get to know the two of you a little bit better, and then we'll talk about the team that you're a part of and the work that you did down in Southwest Virginia. Justin, let's start with you. Can you tell the good folks who are listening to the show, folks who are watching on YouTube, a little bit about yourself and sort of your background?
Well, let's see here. Chesterfield Fire and EMS. I've been here this past February, 24 years. I am a lieutenant. I started June of 24 at our resource management division, and my title is apparatus accessory coordinator.
Okay.
Before that, I was in the field, working the 24 on, 48 off for 23 years and some change. But it was a good change. I think it was good for me to see another part of the fire department that that not many people get to see.
Right.
But let's see here. Before that, I was in the Marine Corps. And I actually flew on CH-46 Sea-Knight helicopters.
Okay.
And here I am now, and I get to, still fly.
Yeah.
In our position with the HART team, but
right.
Along with that comes support and my family, my wife. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness, we have lots of support. Mm-hmm. Beautiful wife, two great children, Aiden and Lily, and luckily both of our parents live fairly close. So. Okay. If the call drops and I need to go away for a couple of days, my schedule's flexible enough to do that, and right. My family were able to accommodate the children or make any adjustments as needed. Yeah.
Graham, what about you? Tell the folks a little bit about yourself.
This is my little over 22 years in the department. I'm going on 23. Current assignment is the emergency operations captain, working with the deputy chief of the fire department. So it's really an administrative role. Before that, I spent a good amount of time here in training, running multiple training programs, some of our fire training and some of our EMS training. And then prior to that, had about 16 years in emergency operations.
Right.
So I've had a very, diverse career, diverse career and experience here in the fire department.
Yeah.
When I got hired, a little over 22 years ago, I never ever thought I would have anything to do with helicopters joining the fire service. Yeah. So that was a pretty amazing thing. And I owe a lot of credit to Justin and some of the other guys currently on the team, because I think the team came about because of them.
Yeah.
Because everything they put into it. So it's been a pretty amazing experience.
Before we get into the HART team, I want to real quick. Growing up, could you have ever envisioned you taking the paths that you've taken? Because I can imagine as a lot of kids, they grow up, they want to be police officers, they want to be firemen. I was a kid who grew up, my room was covered in fire stuff. I know there are lots of kids like that, right? Were you guys like that? Was this a dream that you've had for a number of years, or is this one of those things that sort of happened to you?
I kind of grew up around the fire department. My father was a volunteer chief at Company 3 for Chesterfield.
Okay.
So that's what I knew growing up. I'd hear the siren go off, and he'd go down and run a call.
Uh-huh.
I'd always been very interested in the whole soldier thing. Playing out in the woods. And,
right. Yeah.
That's what we did when we were younger.
Yeah.
And
right.
We stayed outside.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
My parents would punish me inside. Now I think it's the opposite. But anyways. Yeah, so, I always did that. I always went to air shows, and just from a young age, I was very interested in aviation.
Right, yeah.
But, But I never would have thought, and Graham and I have talked about this some on some car rides and stuff, that when I was in the Marine Corps, not in a million years would I have thought that you'd mix military with civilian rescuers.
Yeah.
Like, it was no way.
Just one of those things that just an idea that wouldn't be there.
Exactly.
Graham, what about you? Did you grow up sort of thinking, hey, someday I want to do this kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I think for me, it was all I wanted and everything I wanted. And I went to VCU, and I tried really hard to go into a corporate world and work in a regular 9-to-5 setting, and it's
not for you.
It just didn't work. I mean, I think all my life I really did want to make a difference and help people, and going in that route, it was so abstract and so removed. I didn't have that direct opportunity to make a difference. So for me, this is the perfect career. It's exactly what I want.
So we talked about the Heart team. Let's talk a little bit more about the specifics of what that means before we get into sort of your experiences here recently, or fairly recently, as the case may be. Justin, what is the Heart team? How would you describe it? And take me through how it kind of how it all works.
All right, so Heart. A lot of people hear Heart, like they'll think of what's in your body, or it's so you have to explain to them. We're actually Virginia Heart, Virginia Helicopter Aquatic Rescue Team. We started in 2011, this program. But let me back up for 1 second. Before us, we kind of modeled our program, not really kind of, but we did model our program after North Carolina. Okay. They're kind of like the stakeholders in the whole Heart program in the United States. So we owe a lot of it to them. But it's a Virginia asset. Virginia Heart is a Virginia asset, and we're comprised of members from the Virginia National Guard and Chesterfield Fire and EMS dive team members and SWORG members, and that's Swift Water Response Group. Right. And together we make the Heart team. So it provides aerial platform for rescues, whether it's man-made disasters, natural. So not only for Virginia, but also for other states. Right. So getting back to the meaning of Heart, the inception of it, 2011, we started, and it was we didn't know what we were doing as a program. We had a lot to learn. We had 30 members, and for this type of skill and, I guess, risk, training 30 people for a high-risk situation
seems just like,
it wasn't working out. So we kind of scaled back some, myself and a former member, Bryce Ford. He's off the team now, but we went to North Carolina for their NDOC program for a week and learned a lot, brought some stuff back. And we just kept putting one foot in front of the other. Right. So we've come a long way since 2011.
So he mentioned, Graham, 30 at the time. We scaled it back. So where do we stand today, and how does what's the makeup of that team look like as we sit here?
So right now the partnership sits where it's 18 of us from the fire department that are all trained in water rescue and search, wide area search, and then you've got the air crews. So the way that it would pair up in an aircraft, you'd have the two pilots, and then you'd have two in the back, and then you'd have a rescue team leader, and then a first and second rescuer. So 7 people on an aircraft in a Black Hawk. It sounds like a lot, but those are kind of like a bus. It'll carry a lot of cargo and a lot of weight, a lot of people. So it works out well. Works out really well. When the program first started, we were on Lakotas, which is a smaller aircraft, a smaller airframe. Right. And as we've kind of gone through the years and evolved, we moved into this larger platform, and it's a lot more room, a lot better, a lot smoother. Yeah, works really well.
Before you guys got called into action here in Southwest Virginia after Hurricane Helene, how many? You don't have to give me this exact number. I'm just trying to give folks a sense of what this experience was like for you. How many times had you had to be called into the field versus just the times that you're training? Like, what were your active missions up to that point?
Just a handful, and Justin's been on most of them. He's been to Texas. He's been. We went to South Carolina, Southwest Virginia. We've had multiple standbys, so just a handful. Really, this team gets activated when there are wide scale or large states of emergency declared. Right. Okay. It's not for the single incident or the single event. This is for big catastrophic events.
Right. And obviously when the weather rolls through, I can imagine that you guys are sort of, there's got to be some like heightened level of awareness that this could be something. When did it become clear to you that there was a very good likelihood that you might be deployed someplace because of this storm? And what was it about this specific storm? Because I think now we're a little bit removed from it. We don't remember, those of us in the general public, right? We don't remember just the massive amounts of rain that came from this system. What was it about this storm that required y'all's expertise and to put you into the field the way it did?
That's a pretty big question. And I think that goes back to some historic storms in the past, because this one came up quick, it developed quickly, and actually changed trajectory and sort of tracked more towards the Midwest than I think than they were initially predicting. So as it moved and started shifting towards that North Carolina, Tennessee,
right, the Appalachian
that direction, history has shown us that's a devastating storm for that area, because the water comes in fast, and it's terrible for that topography. So once we saw the change in the storm, we saw the shift, we knew this was going to be bad. VDEM actually was very aggressive about upstaffing and putting resources in place. So I give them a lot of credit.
Right.
They made notifications quick and started mobilizing crews. And even though we didn't have all of the paperwork finalized, they were making things happen very quickly behind the scenes, and that's what it takes.
Yeah. Justin, he mentions quick. How quick is quick when this thing happens? Is it 2 days? Is it 24 hours? Is it 72? What's it look like for you guys?
Maybe a day, if that, night before stuff. I remember talk about it. And what we'll kind of do is we will kind of internally as a team kind of poll the team members and see who's available.
Right. For
2 up to maybe 4 days.
Right.
And we'll get responses back, so that way we can get a list to choose from. But I remember coming home that evening, and I forgot who called me, but anyways.
Somebody.
Yeah. So, and pretty much told my wife, I was like, hey, am I good? Do I need to not do this, or can I? And she's like, yeah, everything's cool. So, I called back and said, yeah, I'm good to go. And then from that point on, you pretty much, for me at least, I start gathering all my stuff together and finalizing some plans and everything. But yeah, maybe a day or so, if that.
So you get the call, you're going to be deployed. You go down there. Take me through your experience, and Justin, we'll stick with you here. Take me through sort of the experience going into this. What were your expectation levels? What information did you have? And how did these, especially these, I know there were pararescues that you guys are being honored on the 22nd from the Virginia National Guard Bronze Award. Can you take me through sort of how those two deployments specifically sort of came to be? Or excuse me, not deployments, how those two rescues came to be?
Right. Well, when you're going on deployment, you kind of know what to expect. But then again, the bigger picture, you have no clue what to expect.
That's really fair, right? You have a general sense, but you don't know what the particulars of that specific situation are going to be. You just have a general sense, like this is what we're going to be needing.
We know that there, it could be flooding, and with that, you don't know if it's going to be, rooftop, window, cars, tree. Right. You have no clue. So, going down there, you try to pack for everything, but you can't pack for everything because we're on an aircraft, and it comes down to weight also. But you kind of want to keep that limited. But going down there, it you just don't know what to expect.
Right.
And what was your the main point of the question? What was
just a general sort of situation for these specific rescues.
Right.
I know that there was a lot more that you guys did than just those two, but I'm just curious the circumstances of those two, and what do you remember? What was your role in how all of that sort of transpired?
So, as Graham mentioned earlier, I was the rescue team leader, and we initially got from the airport a call that another, I think it was Bristol Fire Department, was requesting a helicopter because they had a car up against a dam or with people trapped on it. So, I was listening to the radio, contacted VDEM, and they were like, yeah, it's yours. So we spooled up and started heading down towards the Damascus area, but we couldn't get through because of clouds and the mountains and stuff, and don't want to go into the side of a mountain. So we landed in a field for a couple hours until the weather went away, clear enough for us to go. So after that, we went down, and it, you're just looking, just scanning, trying to find anything, and that's when myself and Staff Sergeant Miller, Dion, the hoist operator, we saw pretty much it was a lady wearing a pink hoodie. And if she wasn't wearing that, we might have seen them. I don't know. But it was, that stood out tremendously. And
so when you say hoist operator, this is the gentleman who was actually when you say hoist, you mean actually moving the
yes, sir.
The apparatus up.
Yes.
And so your job is, describe for me, what's your job in this rescue?
As a rescue team leader, once we spotted the survivors, we'll kind of do a circle. We call it a recon. It's a slow orbit with the door open. And I'll kind of formulate, based on conditions, formulate a rescue plan.
Right, like how much time you got, and that,
right, what type of devices we're going to use,
right.
How to approach the scene, how to get out, and so forth and so on. So once I do that, then everybody kind of agrees with you. You know, it's not what I say only. It has to be a team. Yeah. So everything was good, and we effected the rescue. And I just remember thinking to myself, I'm like, this is really happening, man. This is pretty cool. Like, the first time and since the start of the program in 2011, this is,
this is literally what you trained to do.
We're finally doing it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So it was great. But I wasn't nervous at all. Everything comes back to our training and muscle memory. And yes, there was other factors like wind and a higher hoist altitude than we usually hoist from. In training, we usually do 75 to 100-ish feet, probably. We were around 250 for this one, so that was different. But everything else, it was just like it was training, you know.
Graham, how long would ballpark it for me? Is this a 30-second? Is this a minute and a half? Is this 5 minutes? What's it look like when these things happen?
Both these situations were pretty different. Mine, as we were coming through the valley, the water had taken a strong turn. Basically, picture a stream, debris piles up against a bridge. There's so much debris that it diverts the water through a residential area, so it becomes a flash flood very quickly. The water was so powerful it was knocking over 2-story homes and blowing them to pieces. So we're coming through the valley. There's what I looking down, I just see probably half a dozen people waving at us. And they're all pointing downstream. As I look downstream, I don't see a person. Like Justin was able to pick out a color, a pink against foliage. I just saw a piece of plastic waving like crazy. And so that it stood out so much to me. So as we eased on down, we were at like 100-ish feet roughly. As we eased on down, and we came closer, I could see an arm, and then we could tell there's actually a person. I said. Ours just kind of happened fast. We came up on it quick. We did a very, very tight orbit, and then and I'd already moved someone to the door. We did announce a rescue plan, but I mean, we all kind of knew what we were going to. The plan is we're going to go get them. So
yeah, right, yeah.
So we sent someone down, and like I said, it was roughly 120 feet. So it was a quick hoist.
What was the situation? You said you saw the plastic. What was the actual when you got there? What did you see?
Really all I could see was the top of the tree. I could see off to the, underneath off to the left side of the tree, I could see a piece of, roughly 1 by 3 foot plastic that the gentleman was waving. I couldn't really see him very clearly. I could just see his arm. So I give a lot of credit to our rescue technician, because he was able to, as we lowered him, he grabbed the tree branches and almost climbed underneath the tree branch. Yeah. We didn't put him in the water. He didn't swim to him. He had to climb kind of under the tree while he was still on a cable, get to the base of the tree, and then get him. And it was funny. He was joking, after the fact. We had time to talk about it later on, where he said he didn't have to give the guy any instruction. The guy knew exactly what he was supposed to do.
Right.
Because he basically put his hands together and put his head down, and he was able to hook him up with a rescue device. Yeah. Secure him, and then all I could see again was we wear very bright gloves for this reason. Right. All I could see was his hand pop out from under the tree and give me a thumbs up.
Yep. And then
I said, okay, thumbs up, safety complete, coming up. I mean, it was
that
fast.
Quick.
It was fast.
So time frame wise, What do you from the time you did the orbit to the time that you were out of there? How long do we think?
Time becomes such a blur in that moment. It becomes,
ours was probably around, I want to say, maybe 15 to 18 minutes.
Okay.
And that's from...
I feel like that's a long time to have a Black Hawk hovering anywhere, but maybe that's a...
We try to limit the hovering part.
Right.
You first spot them, and when I say 18 minutes, that includes like I'm going from a list I have right here, 2 adults spotted.
Mm-hmm. So from the
time that we see them
until the time you bug out, right?
And then when that happens, then you reorganize the inside of the aircraft cabin.
Yeah.
And you come back around and you're searching or doing a recon,
right,
and formulating a plan,
right.
Then doing what we call the dance. That's getting the rescuers from the seat or the cabin floor to the rescue hoist,
right.
Going down, unhooking. Then we orbit again,
right,
so we can still see them.
Right.
They come up. They finally make contact with them. Crawling over logs and the water and stuff, and then they'll radio back to us in the aircraft what we're going to do.
Right.
And we pick the first technician up in the first survivor. Maybe do a little orbit, and then go down, send the hook back down for the second technician and the second survivor. So it's doesn't seem like a lot of time, but usually in training though, going down and picking up 2 survivors, you're looking under 10 minutes. But
yeah. I can imagine that when you train for something and you finally get the opportunity to do it, and then you do it, and then you're after the fact. What was it like in those, intervening minutes, hours? I mean, I'm assuming that obviously the job wasn't done. You're still looking to go and help more people if you can. But how long did it take to sink in that this had, you guys had been a part of this in order to rescue people that otherwise would not have been, let's just say it like this, that the outcome would not have been favorable for these folks if you had not been there in the equipment and the training that you had. What did it feel like?
I was pretty focused. Once we got him in the aircraft, he kept yelling that his wife was downstream. So we searched for another mile, and I at least searched for a mile downstream and came back upstream, and I was pretty focused on that. So I don't think anything set in for a while. We had to have a stopping point where we had to go get fuel. So we went back to the airport. We took him to an ambulance. We had to refuel, and that's kind of when it sunk in a little bit. What had actually happened. That I don't think that this gentleman would have had another way to be rescued than by aircraft. I think that was probably his only option.
Any idea how long he had been in that tree?
I've heard 5 hours, roughly. From the time the flash flood hit his house to about when we got there. So he'd been there for hours, and that's freezing cold, lots of wind.
Yeah.
He was really struggling. Yeah. And he had sustained multiple injuries because he and his wife were in the second floor of the house. And when the water hit it and broke it apart, he told me he was coming out of the house as all this lumber and timber was coming by him. That's how he got the injuries. So he was pretty beat up.
Yeah.
And the miracle part of this story was that his wife was in the second floor with him. And when the house broke apart, she ended up off to the right side and never even got wet.
Huh. So he thought she was...
He thought she was gone. She thought he was gone. And there's no communications in the area.
For
there's
sure.
no phones. There's no nothing. So it was a long time before they were reunited and they realized that they both made it. It was pretty amazing.
When these kinds of things happen and you guys are called in to do this work, inevitably there are those of us, back home or wherever who, these awards, these accolades that you're going to receive and have received for this work. I mean, the people who bestow those on you, obviously, you can't put into words how much this kind of thing means. But what does it mean to you guys to be recognized in this fashion, to receive this well-earned, accolades and such for the work that you've done? I can imagine most folks like you probably makes you a little uncomfortable. Being on a podcast like this makes you a little, but what is it like to sort of be recognized for this kind of work?
Well, for me, it's a couple of reasons. I think it's nice to get an award. Mm-hmm. I don't search for them, I don't, and I think most of the people in our kind of role, public service, we don't do it for the awards. We do it because we like it, and that's what we train for it, and that's what we want to do.
Right.
the awards, they just kind of happen. It's more of being in the right place at the right time.
Right.
I didn't choose, but and secondly, for the program itself, just the recognition, and the amount of support that we were getting from our county leadership in Chesterfield, and on the National Guard side, that really, I think, speaks volumes for the program, and just it kind of hits home, exactly what we're out there doing, helping people, but we don't search for the awards, we don't go after them or anything, but it feels good. It just kind of, at the end of the night, my children, telling them about the award ceremony the night, and it feels good to know that they're seeing their father, doing some good to help people. And I hope that sticks in their core, for the rest of their lives. So,
because I feel like public safety in general, I mean, a lot of people will say this job or that job is thankless, but the opportunity, Graham, for people to say thank you, to have that opportunity to recognize people for the work like this that you do. Listen, I'm very talented in a variety of different ways. I'm probably not going to be helping a whole lot of people out, hanging out of a helicopter, hoisting people up, right? But there are those of us who are. What does it mean to you to be a part of this team and to be, to help people in this way, specifically considering just the extreme level of danger that's involved in this? Because, I mean, not to say that, like, listen, I know house fires and there are so many different dangers. I'm not trying to necessarily put it on some sort of scale, but this is just a whole other level, it feels like, in terms of the potential for all kinds of things to go wrong.
Well, for a mission like this to happen and to be successful, flying through a hurricane, I can tell you there has to be a million things that happen right. Yeah. I mean that. There's a million things that are happening perfectly at that moment. And it might sound cliche when I say this, but it was an absolute honor to be called upon to serve and to be able to execute that mission. Yeah. In every way. It was a complete honor to do that. Yeah. I don't ever want anything bad to happen to anybody, but if something is happening, I want to do everything I can to fix it. So that was a complete honor for me.
Cool. All right, I'll get you guys out of here on this one, and we'll use this one as the last question. Inevitably, any people who train as much as I'm sure you guys do for not just this, but for your roles in general, you learn something, right? You take something away from everything, right? What did you learn? What did you take away from your experience in Southwest Virginia that's going to make the HART team even better the next time some storm does a thing and, leaves people in the kind of distress that these folks were in? Justin, we'll start with you.
All right. So one thing I learned, and the first thing that comes to mind is when we spotted the first two survivors, because we ended up getting 2 adult males right after these two. Mm-hmm. But the first thing that came to mind was, we had our training. We never have 2 people in both sides of the aircraft searching. Mm. So we had people in both sides of the aircraft searching down here. And when we spotted the survivors, now it's like, okay, where do we go from here? Mm. So the R1 and R2, they were going over here. And in my mind, I hit the reset button. Mm. I'm like, all right, we're going, and it's called the dance. We have a 5-minute out, a 1-minute out. Mm-hmm. And I'm said over the intercom system in the aircraft, I said, let's reset. We're starting from 1 minute out. Mm-hmm. R1 and R2 got back in their seat, and it was just like we're training here at the airport or one of our training sites. Yeah. So
your training allowed you to do a thing you hadn't done before because everybody was on the same page about what that would mean.
Oh, yes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, definitely. So everybody knows each other's roles. Mm-hmm. So, and that kind of helps with mitigating risk up in the aircraft. So if I miss something, the crew chief or another rescuer will kind of pipe up on the intercom and, catch that. Mm-hmm. But we do everything very scripted when it comes from the seat to the cabin door. But going back to your question, what I learned was revert back to training. Yeah. Slow down. Mm. Slow is smooth, yep. And that just reset everything, and there was no anxiety. Yeah. People weren't rushing, fumbling things. it just clicked right along.
That's awesome.
And you know, when I didn't mention this earlier, but when R1 and R2 were going down in our aircraft, from that hoist altitude that we were so high versus training, they got swung underneath of a tree canopy. We couldn't see them anymore, myself and the hoist operator. We've never trained on that before. So we're looking at the cable then. The cable got slack. And then I see Varner, one of the rescue technicians, pop out in this little hole, and he mentioned the gloves again, and he was giving us a signal, a hand signal we have to cable up. And that wasn't the briefed plan, but I know he's giving me that for a reason, and I trust them.
And you trust him, right?
And we did that,
That was
and
what we're gonna do.
they had elected to disconnect because they would end up getting tangled up in the trees and stuff and put the jeopardy of the aircraft. So training.
Yeah.
You know, repetitive training, start from the basics.
Yeah.
And slow down, and everything will go good.
Yeah.
You know.
Graham, what about you? Do you have anything that you would say that you sort of took away from this, that you learned that you're going to sort of put to good use going forward?
Yes, sir. I think my big takeaway for this whole situation is that these rescues happened because we were in the air, flying and actively searching.
Yeah.
Every day across the country, when people have emergencies, they call 911 and someone comes to them. You know, nobody called 911 for this. This was we were flying over and it happened. So my takeaway is, you know, to try and aggressively get out there, and as soon as the opportunity presents itself, as soon as the storm passes, whatever it is, you know, to get out there and start looking, start searching, because that's where we make the difference.
Yeah,
that's where it happens.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you coming on the podcast, talking to us about this. Congratulations on the very well earned awards. Obviously, like you said, we have no words to really express these things. So awards is as good as we can do. But thank you very much for your service, and thank you for everything you do for not just the state of Virginia, but for Chesterfield County especially.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right. Make sure you check us out on social media. On Twitter, it's at Chesterfield VA. On Instagram, it's Chesterfield Virginia on Word. And on Facebook, you can check out our podcast page. Just search Chesterfield Behind the Mic. Now, make sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, or wherever it is that your shows are sold. And if you're so inclined to give us a rating or review, we greatly appreciate that. As always, a video version of our show is available on our YouTube channel as well as on our website at chesterfield.gov/podcast. That's also where you can submit some feedback anytime, make a suggestion, or just reach out to us. You can watch the show on WCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7, on the weekends at noon. That is Comcast Channel 98 and Verizon Channel 28. Lastly, check out chesterfield.gov/connect with us. You find any number of other ways to connect with Chesterfield County. My thanks to my director, Martin Stith, my executive producer, Teresa, Bonifas, and all the good folks from Constituent Media Services for all they do. And my thanks to you for joining us today. So from all of us here in Chesterfield, thanks again for making us a part of your day. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care.
From blogs to podcasts, and I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again.
Weekly video segments and newsletters,
Social media, the latest community news,
This is your Chesterfield News Minute for September 19th.
how to get in touch, and everything in between. If you want to know about Chesterfield County, our Connect With Us webpage has you covered. Chesterfield.gov/connect with us. Connect with us, your source for all things Chesterfield.